Guest host Ronnie Parisella joins us this week to talk about the explosive growth in Microsoft's Q2 numbers, as well as forecasts from Gartner. Plus, we interview the Wiser Agency's Chris Wiser on social media marketing for ChannelPro. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 132, The Jerk Tax. Today's episode is sponsored by Corporate Armor. Get free remote support software exclusively from Corporate Armor. Stop spending big money on expensive remote desktop tools and use Corporate Armor Connect and Fix for free. Connect and Fix is secure, reliable remote desktop software that enables you to support clients and fix their technology issues remotely from anywhere, anytime. Connect and Fix runs in a fast, secure cloud offering commercial-grade and compliance-friendly remote desktop and support technology for free. It includes features like file transfer, session recording, restart and reboot, and live video and text chat on PC, Mac, and Linux platforms. Users can even share their screens with clients for presentations or training purposes. So stop paying for remote access and support software and switch to Connect and Fix by Corporate Armor. They take the pain out of sourcing IT products. Find them at corporatearmor.com. Again, that's corporatearmor.com. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 132. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine program that is aimed at you, the VARs, the MSPs, the IT integrators, the MSPs, I think I said MSP twice, because it's twice as much goodness for you. You are in the right place. Welcome. Joining me this week and pretty much every week is executive editor Rich Freeman.
Greetings, folks. We like MSPs so much. Or MSPs are so nice. Matt said it twice.
Yes, I did that on purpose. As I'm going to stick with that. We also have a guest host with us today. We've had him on before, but it's been a while, so we'll let him reintroduce himself again. But Ronnie Parisella, consultant at MacTez, is here and with us. Ronnie, hello.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Ronnie. I ran an MSP for 10 years in New York City, successful. After that, I went into MSP management consulting and have helped a bunch of interesting and small and growing businesses across the country. Got back from San Francisco, did a trip to Denver, been down in Atlanta the last couple of years, helping businesses make the most of the MSP landscape, get the most out of distribution, vendors, and really just, not step in some of the potholes that I stepped in over my 20 years in IT.
Well, it's a fantastic story, and we're gonna pick at you a little bit and learn a little bit more about that transition. Because the last time you were here, you were working for MSP Foundry was your MSP, right?
That's correct. That was my business, and with a partner, and we met a bunch of very interesting clients. And through just marketing and meeting people, I met the company that I actually wooed me to come in-house and help them today. The company is called MacTez. They've been in business for 25 years, downtown Manhattan in Chinatown. 20 employees. Half the employees have been here over 10 years. They have a really strict business focus on technology. It's not about the technology. It's not about the speeds and feeds. We don't do free evaluations. We don't have a flashy website. We've never advertised. All of our clients are from word of mouth. It's about the personal relationship with the clients. It's about that white glove. We are here for you. You call us when you need us anytime type of approach. And I must say, without a real focus on the MSP tools and platforms, with really just building the business into the platforms, it's a great approach for me, and it's one that I haven't tackled since I started my own business back in 2000. So I'm loving it here.
Awesome. And I will be the first to point out, for those who listened to the show last time, you may not have ever seen Ronnie, but Ronnie has this magnificent flowing beard that is just awesome.
True story.
And, yeah, so if you're here watching on video, you'll get to take in its awesomeness. But if you are listening, let me tell you, it's you. If you were near him, you would just want to brush it. And he says he's got people who does that for him. Is that right?
Well, yes, but that's a different podcast. We'll talk about that.
It's a podcast. I want to hear that one. Okay. So Rich, we've got a couple cleanup things that we got to talk about first before we maybe dive in a little bit more with Ronnie and the news. So, Rich, the first thing that I think is important to point out is that we are now on a new host. So we don't like to talk about the show workings too much, but this one might be something that affects people. So we this week, we alluded to it last week, that it was kind of probably going to happen, but we have moved our podcast to a new host for a couple of reasons. One, it was starting to put a strain. We were self-hosted, and it was starting to put a little bit of a strain on our infrastructure. So I've been wanting to kind of get it off of our own hosting and the same platform that serves our websites and stuff for kind of a while. We were really worried it was going to break things. So we hope we hope that if you are a subscriber, that like this was all transparent to you and you just got the new episode as normal, which we were told should happen. And if you had any little hiccups, you can go and you can try to remove the show and resubscribe, and it should work fine. But ideally, everybody should still be subscribed. Rich, what do you think?
Well, I mean, if you're listening now, you're probably
you made it.
If you're listening, you're good. Welcome.
If you can't hear us, let us know.
Exactly. Write us immedially.
But if you're on YouTube, this didn't affect anybody who is subscribed or watches on YouTube. Just our audio audience, which is pretty big. So we did move. I mean, we can say we did move to Libsyn, which is kind of like the big podcast hosting service, and that has also solved one other problem that people who've been listening for a while know. We have been trying to get the show into Spotify for like a year and a half. And I swear to God, unless you are using one of these big, massive hosts that have some kind of integration with them, it is impossible to get in. I just went
through this recently with a podcast that I'm running for a magazine, and we moved over to Fireside. I don't know if you checked them out, but it was a one-button push once I had enough content on the system to get listed on Apple and Spotify and 20 other platforms. It's really interesting today the way they farm it all out.
Right, it is, and and a year and a half of like trying and sending emails and looking at web forms and like reading, and then like we moved the show over, and I hit like you said, it's like 2 clicks, and poof, an hour later we're on Spotify. That's like son of a. But it's all for our listeners, right? So listeners, if you've been hoping that we would get into Spotify, so you can listen to us there, if that's where you consume a lot of your podcasts and content, you can now get us on Spotify. So
That's
welcome to our new Spotify audience. We're so glad you're here. Make sure you subscribe and join us week to week as we explore awesome topics and news and interviews for you, the MSPs out there. Rich, was there anything else we needed to clear up?
Not in terms of the re-platforming. Nope.
All right. So in that case, we'll move on. So Rich, do you have any questions for Ronnie before we dive into the news?
Well, we were talking about the beard before, Ronnie, and if I remember right from the first time you were on the show, you not only have a magnificent beard, but you are actually a beard judge in competitions.
That's correct. I hosted the Binghamton first annual beard competition last year, waiting for the invite for the second one, and I am 4 years in a row at the Coney Island Beard and Mustache competition, not only as a judge, but also as a 4-person. They actually let me tabulate and calculate the votes as well, not just casting my own. So it's always a good time. I like to say that it is it's a Brooklyn rite of passage, the Coney Island Beard and Mustache show. Come on out. It's usually in September or October, and I'm looking forward to being a part of it again.
So now, do you compete in these, or do you just judge?
I competed for 3 years, and each of the 3 years that I competed, I knew I lost before I had entered the building, just by the people smoking outdoors. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I have a mouth. I talk. I enjoy being on stage with a microphone and getting the crowd amped. So I was invited to judge the next year, and it's been fun ever since.
Awesome. We've got to include a link to that competition in the show notes, because I found it, I'm guessing, through one of your social media feeds or something like that. But just very recently, I kind of clicked through and I was looking at pictures from this beard growing, and it's way beyond whatever it is you're imagining right now out in the audience there. The scale and the complexity, these beards are just unbelievably amazing.
It's not just length, it's girth. It's got a lot to do with it. It's the total package.
And style, some of them are like uniquely styled up and with the pastes and stuff, and do different formations.
To each their own. It is a form of personal expression, and all beards are welcome. Even all you grow is a mustache. That's good enough for us too. No one is discriminated against, of course.
That is awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. And Rich mentioned the show notes, and for those listening and maybe new to the show, we do have a show notes page on channelpronetwork.com for every episode where, as we go through and we talk about various topics and news and articles and stuff, we put links to those so that way you can follow along. Because we'll touch on these topics here on the show, but there's usually always a lot more in the news release or the article that you might want to dig into if you're really interested. So go and find that on channelpronetwork.com for episode 132 in this case, and follow along as we go. Now, Ronnie, you successfully ran your MSP for 10 years, as you said. What made you want to change?
I think, the times changed a little bit. There wasn't as big of a focus at the time on hardware. We were a very, very heavy server and hardware data backup company. So there was just a big, big push for hardware. And then when that changed, when the manufacturers started, getting a lot more life out of their devices, not using LTO tapes anymore, not using spinning hard drives, the things that really extend the life of a workstation or a server in that case, it just changed the model a little bit, and it changed the way that we were billing and some of the relationships that we had with our clients. We didn't have a straight MSP focus. We had base charges for our networks and systems that we managed, and then we went time and materials on top of it. So I would say it wasn't exactly the best billing structure for the time. We were, I think we were just shy of $6 million a year MRR when we decided to split. But I sold to my partner. My partner sold, I think, 3 times after that. The book of business turned over a couple of times, and I took that knowledge of working with my customers, taking some a real estate investment trust pre-IPO, and really digging into the business side. And I thought that the greater skill set, the more expensive skills per hour hat that I could wear was MSP management consulting, really working with business owners as opposed to trying to help them pick up one more customer like I was doing. It was a lot easier to use my expertise with distribution, with manufacturing, with the vendors to streamline and sort of shepherd a smaller firm through the wilderness that really is, even let's just pick Ingram Micro. I mean, 300,000 employees, I think they're only not in 30 or 35 countries on the planet. It's a tough company to navigate. It's certainly a tough company to get anything out of. So with my relationships, the people that I began 20 years ago with were junior sales reps, and now they're sales directors in charge of all of the sales for East Coast in the US. So now it's a lot easier for me to say, hey, I got an MSP that's doing this, this, and this. Well, they should be here, and have them talk to this person. And I understand that ecosystem now. So it's a lot easier for me to ask an MSP 5 or 6 questions about their business and then really just put my finger right on what they need, just because I've constructed and reconstructed probably 30 MSPs now. I understand where the gaps are in when as you build the business plan. The roads that you don't want to go down because you don't know how to might still be the most profitable, and we just have to get you there the right way. So that took me into meeting Mactez and really just being wowed by their business. And again, it's interesting designing an MSP automation system for a team that doesn't really want it. They're not really seeing all of the benefits, because this wasn't a company that was out and about in the MSP landscape. This wasn't a company that was focused on automation. So now when we're evaluating tools and trying to determine what the best ways to swim upstream are, we don't want to now just start sending automated emails to our clients. We never did that before. So even if a client opens up a ticket with us, we don't want to just respond with something automated that isn't personal, that isn't on top of what you're looking for, that doesn't address your timeframes or things like that. So I think coming from a purely white glove consulting firm, it's caused me to look much more deeply about really the communication that I think most clients, most MSPs just don't do well. They'll say, oh, you have a problem, we're fixing it. Well, that's not good enough. What was the issue? Why did it come up? Why didn't we resolve it? Why isn't this involved in our monitoring and maintenance? Why won't this not come up again? Those are the types of things that we really seek to, get to the root cause of most issues, if we can't eradicate it to begin with, and explain it so that the client feels confident that we're going to, address it a little quicker next time.
Some people would argue, though, that clients don't want that much information, right? The concept of TMI, like, you're making it worse by telling them too much?
Correct. But what I find TMI is always when you're asking for information. When you're giving information, if it's all on the same page, here's what happened, here's how I reacted, here's how I'm going to handle it, here's how I'm going to follow up with you. If you don't hear from me by tomorrow morning, assume it's done. The yellow brick road, if you will. We're responding as often as possible with that path for the resolution of the issue.
Gotcha.
It's such a critical thing. There are all sorts of studies about how what a difference it makes for somebody even if you're communicating to them that it's going to be whatever, a day, 2 days before I fix your problem. If you just acknowledge, I'm aware of the problem, I'm working on it, and here's when the resolution is going to come, that's a much less frustrating situation for people to be in than just not knowing if they've been heard or understood, et cetera. So yeah, the communication thing with MSPs, I think is a real challenge. And it reminds me, I can't remember if it was a year ago or 2 years ago, I went out to some managed services consultants and pulled together a list of New Year's resolutions that they thought MSP should adopt. And one of the people I went to was Carrie Simpson, who you might know and is really great. And I remember her resolution for the MSPs out there was, hey, folks, why don't you try answering your phones for a change? Because I've called a bunch of you, and I know for a fact no one's answering the phone. You know what I mean? That's kind of where we're at from a communication skills standpoint, I think, too often.
Listen, there are a lot of MSP owners who come from the business end. The MBA guys, the guys who know how to count and can't spell NT, not technologists, not engineers, don't have that brain. And it's so important for IT business owners to not assume that everyone else is a technician as well. If all of our clients were technically savvy and focused and intelligent, they wouldn't need us. So in communicating, we have to make sure that we're not making our clients feel dumb. And that's a hard time. That's a hard topic sometimes.
That's unavoidable in the case of a lot of people I've met.
Well, when they're paying you to help them, it's even more difficult because then you have the bedside manner that's missing. And honestly, we can't just say, no, that's not the right question, or no, that's not what we want to do here. We have to help with the suggestions. And whenever we get a client question that we didn't answer, we have to assume that question is going to come up again. Document it, write it down, let everybody else know what the answer to this is so that the new person coming in the door doesn't have to run into the same trap that you just did. Documentation is really critical. And I've been forced the last 6 months to focus on documentation. I'm sorry, forced. I have been, wrong word. I've been focused on documentation over the last 6 months that isn't necessarily technically focused. It has to do about what the team is doing on the back end, what the team is doing on a weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. And then how do we get that information to our directors to believe it, love it, want to sell it, and then allow them to propose those solutions as recommendations to our clients. It's not an easy flow when you're designing a system that wasn't there before. So it's all about communicating it the right way. It's putting the needs of the client first. It's trying to stay as little keep the salesies out of there as much as possible. Never say 24/7, stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I'm really glad you're here, and I know you're going to be on with us the whole show, and it's going to be great to pick your brain as we go through some of these news stories and topics later. So for those who kind of want to get a little preview, we're going to talk a little bit about our SMB forum coming up in Dallas. We've got some news coming out of Microsoft and a report from Gartner. And what else we got here, Rich? We got traditional, well, whatever that one is, we're going to get to that. And of course, we're going to get to the elephant in the room, which...
Hey, I'm losing weight, man. I'm trying. It's not nice.
Not what we were talking about. We were talking about 2020 business strategies.
Oh, okay. All right.
So yeah, we're not talking about the New Year's resolutions and getting to the gym.
Good.
But it's good. It's good that you're doing that.
Yes.
Although, yeah. So also, we are going to have a museum pick and a tech pick as well. And then, of course, we also have a great interview that we just did with Chris Weiser of the Weiser Agency. So we're gonna cut over to that when the time comes, and we're gonna listen to that. And that was really good. So more on that to come. Rich, we have the ChannelPro SMB Forum in Dallas coming up next month. It's on March 5th. Why don't we talk a little bit about what's coming down the pike with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, here I am broadcasting this week from home for a change. And, what am I doing here in Seattle? I'm, like so many of us at Team ChannelPro, preparing for the first of our 5 this year live events. So we've been doing live events at ChannelPro for a bunch of years at this point. And it started out, it was like once a year, then we did 2. The last few years we've been doing 4. We've expanded to 5 now. Dallas in March is the first that we're doing. In May, we're going to be in Washington, D.C., I believe. Is that right?
Yep, D.C. in May.
In July, we will be in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is very exciting for us because that is actually where ChannelPro headquarters is. That's like the mothership. So we're really happy to be doing something there in Raleigh. And then September, we will be in Boston, in Newton, Massachusetts specifically. We've done a number of shows there before, and we're coming back again. And then in November, we will be in the Los Angeles area, specifically in City of Industry. And it's our triumphant return to Southern California. We were in Northern California last year, but I know there were a lot of folks in Southern California who missed us, and we're coming back, folks. City of Industry. So I'm spending a lot of time these days preparing content for those shows. And so I can give you a little bit of a hint of some of the stuff that we've got coming your way that we're all super excited about here. And one of the topics that it was interesting listening to you talk about MacTez, Ronnie, because one of the panel discussions we've got this year is about building and delivering cloud solutions. So we're taking it as a given that everyone in the audience is selling cloud products to some extent. Office 365 seats, maybe a little infrastructure as a service on Azure and so on and so forth. But there's a big difference between selling cloud products and using those cloud products to solve business problems in one way or another for your customers. That's a solution. And we're going to have some panelists kind of talking about how that works. And, I know already from having spoken to these panelists that what they have to say is going to dovetail very nicely with what you were talking about. I mean, it's a very different discipline, and it's also a much, much more profitable one and a stickier one for the client. And so that'll be something we're talking about. We're going to be talking about an interesting topic, very timely topic, managed security. And I'll tell you right now, that conversation is going to begin with the panelists we've assembled defining managed security, because you will hear people talk about that in very, very different ways. And being in managed security is not the same as being a managed security service provider, an MSSP. We'll get into all of that. But very interesting conversation coming about what it means to be doing managed security versus what it is you're probably doing today. We've got the amazing Luis Alvarez coming back again for 4 new cities to talk about his IoT business. So you hear about the Internet of Things, you hear all these giant numbers attached to it, huge opportunity, but what do I actually do today to make money from it? Luis Alvarez has figured that out. He's already making money from it in his business, and he will provide very specific information about how he does that. And I'll tell you this as well. Anybody in the audience who's an MSP can do what he's doing. You do not need to be some sort of IoT expert. And then our colleague Colleen Fry will be doing a series of one-to-one conversations with some of your peers, some MSPs out there. She's going to be talking to one person about hiring and retention strategies, and another one about vertical industry specialization, which is something that everybody is telling you should be doing if you're not doing it already. Well, how do you do it? We've got somebody who went through the process and can share that. And I'm now drawing a total blank on that. What's the third one that she's going to be doing? Well, it's fascinating. Whatever it is, I guarantee you it's really interesting. So please, we're in Dallas in just a little bit over a month. And events.channelpronetwork.com is where you can go to register and get more information about all those sessions that I just discussed. And if you are anywhere near the area, we hope you'll join us.
Of course, you didn't talk about my session.
You're right. You're right.
I will be there, Rich. I will be doing my dancing monkey show on stage.
Which is the, what do we call it? The Tech Trends Feud, right?
Tech Trends Feud, yeah. So we're doing 5 new cities. It's the same thing we did last year. There'll be some new categories and topics, but we generally revisit places after every other year. So there's 5 cities that haven't seen the feud. So we're gonna continue that forward here in 2020. And Ronnie, did you see the feud last year? Were you at one of the shows with that?
No, I am a feud rookie.
Feud rookie. Did you catch Jeopardy though?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So he saw that one. So maybe this year you'll be able to catch the feud. So Ronnie, what'd you say? Lots of fun, right? I keep it fun.
Your sessions are always the most fun of the conferences for sure.
Well, I appreciate that. They put me on after lunch to wake everybody back up and get people back into it. But we're going to learn a little bit about hardware and technology, of course, while we do that. Now, Rich, what I'm most excited about this year, and I had nothing to do with this. This is the cool part. We always try to come up with like a theme. Like last year, it was bigger, better business. I love the theme this year. It's so up my alley. Rich, tell them what it is.
This year's theory, and this was just like a bolt of inspiration to our boss, Michael Siggins. This kind of came out of nowhere. This year it is the Game Theory Tour, the ChannelPro SMB Forum Game Theory Tour for 2020.
And so that means like we're kind of playing off the whole game theory thing with like actual games. So we're going to have like old arcade classic kind of theming going around. And I think with the cocktail party, we're talking about having like gaming stations set up for people to play old arcade games.
In addition to hosting a session for you guys, I'd love to come and be a poker dealer. I love playing cards. Set me up in the corner. Set me up at a blackjack table with some fake chips. That'll be fun.
We could probably do that.
That would be totally awesome. We always do, these are one-day single-track shows. You're there all day. You're getting tons of really valuable content, but there's always a cocktail reception the night before. And how phenomenal would it be, actually, to have a card table set up?
I love it. I'm in. Sounds great.
All of these great ideas. Rich, we'll propose that on our next Tuesday event meeting. Yeah. So, yeah, definitely. Events.channelpronetwork.com is the website. Make sure that you go there and register in advance. It's $99 to reserve your seat, but you get refunded that when you check in. It's just to make sure that we want to make sure that you have a seat reserved for you, but it also helps to reserve and cover things like meal and prep for materials and stuff. But you will get that back if you check in. So make sure you do that. Events.channelpronetwork.com. Go there now. Go ahead. Go. You can listen while you register. Go. It's okay. And we'll put links out to that all over the place. All right, news, Rich. This one is coming out of Microsoft. It's the fiscal year 2020 Q2 results. Am I reading this right?
You are, yeah. And I'll say right up front, we're going to talk about a few things in the news. And actually, a lot of what we're going to talk about here in the news segment of the show isn't even from this week. So this is one of those strangely kind of quiet news weeks in the industry. There weren't a ton of really big stories. Certainly, as I've been focused a lot on the events, I haven't been doing a whole lot of writing this week. So normally that's what we would kind of dive into is big headlines from the news, articles I posted, and nothing much to talk about there. So I thought we would do two things that would be kind of useful. And so one, Microsoft reported its latest quarterly numbers, and we'll start there. And then the big analyst firms, Gartner, IDC, Forrester, those folks have all been issuing predictions for the year ahead and wrapping up some numbers from last year. I think there are some nuggets of information in there that are worth kind of diving into as well. But we'll kind of start with Microsoft here. And part of what interested me here, kind of looking at their numbers. So the cover story for ChannelPro's February issue is going to be our annual State of the Channel survey. So every year we go out and we have this questionnaire that we send out to a bunch of MSPs and VARs and system builders and other folks in our audience. And we collect a lot of information from them about what they're selling and what the profits are like in different market categories and so on. So cover story in February, we'll share with you the latest results of our latest study. And one of the things that article will talk about is how the managed services and cloud computing markets have really kind of reached a mature stage at this point. Now, that doesn't mean that they're played out by any means. There's a lot of upside in both those areas. But some of the numbers that we collected this year, it was really kind of striking to me, the extent to which it shows. We're out of that initial phase of getting into these markets, and they've really kind of begun to mature and blossom, and business models are getting more sophisticated. At the same time, it's always useful, for those of us who've been in the industry a long time, and we've been talking about managed services forever, it's easy to forget that there are a ton of channel pros out there who haven't even adopted managed services yet. Like that's still on the horizon for some people out there. And similar kind of thing with cloud computing. If you look at the numbers Microsoft reported this week, it really kind of calls attention to the fact that cloud, which is yesterday's news to those of us in the industry, really is still at a relatively early stage of where it can go potentially. And so, just to call out a few numbers that Microsoft called out in their report, their commercial cloud revenue in the previous quarter was $12.5 billion. That's up 39% year over year, commercial cloud revenue. Office commercial products specifically, most of which is obviously cloud related these days, that was up 16%. Azure revenue.
Oof.
Yeah.
I saw that one. That one jumped off the page to me when I was at 68%, 65%? 62%. Oh my God.
And even Dynamics, which a lot of people aren't doing yet because it feels like that's a whole different area of expertise, that's up 12%. So it's true, as we will report to you in our cover story next month, that cloud is not exactly some newfangled thing that people are just beginning to wrap their arms around. On the other hand, it is still, especially in areas like infrastructure and platform as a service and Azure and so on, it's still in an explosive growth phase, and there really is.
It's just a fad, Rich. It's just a fad. In a couple of years, it'll go away, and then we're going to be going back to fax machines and postal mail and rotary telephones.
If you look at all of the companies, the billion-dollar companies that are set up just to be AWS specialists and make AWS a little bit easier to work with, and the billions that come after Amazon has already made their money on it, it's staggering. I think a quote that I read, what the average company pays to Amazon, $23 are paid to consultants for that.
Wow, really?
Tremendous.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And that's a huge story as well, obviously, is just, we're talking about Microsoft's numbers, but there is this giant channel opportunity around, software as a service and the cloud-based applications business, Salesforce and, Dynamics CRM and so on, and all of the public cloud platforms, Office 365, that, huge opportunities for partners. But it is very much a matter of knowing the right way to get into that, and it's like there was a time in the not too distant past where you were probably making your living, selling and managing infrastructure. And it's really less and less, with each passing year, it's less and less about managing infrastructure and the stuff in the server room, the server closet, and more about understanding how your customer's business works and figuring out where you can kind of plug in the tools that are going to make them more efficient and help them make more money.
So I see Dynamics 365 with a 42% increase year over year. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, I miss that. That's huge.
Because we're talking billions. We're not talking a couple of dollars.
Right. Because I see they have Dynamics products and cloud services, and then Dynamics 365 as its own line, which shows much higher growth for Dynamics than just 12%.
And just on the absolute macro level, in that second quarter of their fiscal year, Microsoft made $36.9 billion, which was up 14%. That's actually really impressive if you think about it. A company that's been around as long as Microsoft, that does a company that big, to be growing 14% year over year in a quarter is actually something. They got a lot of things going right for them over there these days.
Yeah, I only see one loser, one negative number here, and that's Xbox is down.
Well, let's talk about that. Microsoft Game Studios is a completely different beast. Microsoft Game Studios in 2019 made $125 billion. That's a lot. That does not count Xbox hardware. Now, Xbox hardware, you know how it goes. They lose money on every box that they sell until they hit that point, and then they can drop the price or come out with a new product and keep it moving for straight profit. But I think 2 years ago, they were still losing money on Xboxes, each one that they sold. So it's not surprising to see that is a negative. I'll bet you that is mostly hardware, because when you look at the Game Studios revenue at $125 billion, that's all microtransactions and digital games and $5 flaming swords for your fighter in a game and things like that. So that revenue has very, very low operating expenses on.
Yeah,
that's almost just free.
It says Xbox content and services. I also know they're getting ready to launch a new console, so I would imagine that software sales will probably pick up. And I think they just bought a whole bunch of studios too.
Yeah, and that might also account for extensive R&D for the next system that they're lumping into losses for last year.
Yeah, so I wouldn't put Xbox down. I think they're poised to take another big swing in gaming as they put their new console out, which I think comes out later this year, Christmas time, if I remember correctly.
Unsure.
Yeah, looks like a little actually looks like a little mini tower PC with a little slot drive on the front for discs. Kind of interesting stuff. So cool. Rich, anything else in here that you want to comment on?
No, I think that's good on the Microsoft front. Maybe take a little look at some of the numbers from Gartner and IDC in terms of what happened in calendar Q4 of 2019, and looking ahead to 2020 here and seeing if there are any little numbers in there that might stand out. Tell us a little bit about how the industry is changing. Let's take a look at the Gartner numbers first here. And they're looking at global technology spending in 2020 worldwide. They're expecting that to be $3.9 trillion. That's a 3.4% increase, which, again, in a market that size, 3.4% might not sound like a lot, but that's actually a pretty good number. But it gets more interesting when you start kind of breaking down into the different categories there. So if you look, for example, at a category they label as devices, so that's just hardware, right? So that's going to be your desktops and laptops, and presumably they include smartphones and tablets, and not the back-end stuff. They have a category called data center systems that I think is more the server hardware and so on. But in terms of endpoint devices, they actually have that ticking up a little bit in 2020. They see a 0.8% increase. But that's coming after a year in which it dropped devices revenue 4.3%, and it's a year ahead of a year in 2021 when they're forecasting a 0.3% drop. So it's a bit of an anomaly.
Well, I'm not sure, Rich. I think this goes to my point earlier about the hardware life cycles being longer. In your first cell phone, you didn't have it 3 years. Your cell phone today, you can keep for 3 years. With the reduced spinning parts, less fans, the new MacBooks have no moving parts. So I think they're lasting longer, which means there's less opportunity for clients, end users, to need a new one. They may want a new one and want the latest and greatest every year, but I've never looked at my notebook computer the way I looked at my cell phone, where I wanted the latest one. So I think that actually makes sense. I think that's always going to be the smallest area of growth, because you're really only going to see growth every 3 or 4 years on heavy upgrade cycles, I think.
And when there is a particular reason, some sort of forcing factor, maybe like, say, Windows 7, dropping out of support from Microsoft to kind of fuel that a little bit. And that goes to some data from IDC. In 2019, they said global shipments of PCs grew 2.7% year over year, which is the first full year of PC growth since 2011, basically. And obviously a huge part of that is businesses that were still on Windows 7 devices realizing now is the time I've really got to make the move to Windows 10. I think there are a lot of people who are experiencing that uptick in hardware sales as a result of that issue.
I have no way to know this, I'm guessing, but I really believe that uptick was also through business success and expansion, new employees getting hired, not necessarily replacement of old hardware due to manufacturer limitations, but I could be wrong.
It's a good point, actually, because unemployment rates obviously are down.
Last year was the lowest, I think, in 11 years. So that tells me that those working people are going to need more computers, whether they had decent ones to upgrade from or not.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Looking back at the Gartner numbers again, though, so we were talking about the hardware, the devices numbers. They're down 4.3% last year, up. They're projecting 0.8% this year. If you look at the categories where the biggest growth is going to happen in 2020, according to Gartner, the two top ones on the list are IT services, which they're expecting to grow 5%,
Yep.
and enterprise software, where they're expecting 10.5% growth. And this really kind of goes back to what we've already been talking about here, which is this idea that it's less about infrastructure, it's more about services and software and what technology can help businesses do to increase the size of the top line, increase the size of the bottom line, get more efficient, get new customers, and so on. For folks who are making their living, like you did once upon a time, Ronnie, selling the hardware, selling devices, the growth opportunity in this market for ChannelPros really is more and more around services and the business value that.
But it's funny, if you look at the numbers, if your average IT shop just takes that 5% growth and doesn't care about the loss and other things, you're crushing it. You're crushing it. You don't have to worry about a dip in devices or a dip in this. You're selling business line services, your line of business apps, your enterprise softwares, your Sages, your Peachtrees, your QuickBooks, things like that, and then you're providing your services after that. I don't see an area where I would recommend an MSP avoid diving deep into based on these numbers and the growth that's speculated.
Oh, I mean, like beyond services and software and other, like if you're focused in anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I'm saying just looking at this breakdown of growth, I wouldn't advise MSP clients to avoid any one of these areas. I think they're all showing very solid numbers.
Right. So like data center systems, for example, so that is the back end infrastructure and the servers and so on. I mean, that's projected to grow 1.9%. This year, so maybe not nearly as much as fast as software and services, but it is still. I mean, there are no negative numbers on the list. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Now, look at communication services. Is that your VoIP companies, your Vonages and things like that?
Yes, although I don't know for sure, but I'm gonna guess it's a little bit broader than that. But yeah, that would definitely be in there.
Or is that telecom and internet as well? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, I suspect it is, though, because if you look at the other categories, and that 5 categories, folks. So data center systems, with just data center hardware for the most part, enterprise software, devices, IT services, and communication services. So I would assume anything communication related, from connectivity to unified communications and VoIP and telecom services and so on, would probably fit in that communication services bucket.
And do they define devices or break that down at all? Because I'm sitting here thinking like IoT is just on this massive growth, and that's a lot of devices, devices, but it's a lot of devices.
That's a great point. And I mean, I don't know exactly how they define it, but I would be very surprised if IoT devices are included. It's probably more in that realm of traditional IT devices.
Yeah, so like desktops, notebooks, phones, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Tablets. Yeah. Okay. So there is definitely some poise for hardware growth, it was what they're saying, even into that next year. But if you look beyond just the traditional devices, there's probably a lot more opportunity in hardware if you look in the right place.
Agreed. Yeah. And and it's coming your way whether you're ready for it or not, because your customers are buying.
I just pulled up a slide deck that I read for Ingram Micro in 2013, where I pulled the Gartner numbers at the time, and they were expecting IT to grow to 3.7 trillion in the next year. So just doing the math off of that, we're in great shape. We're still pushing the numbers, and we're still speculating that everything is going to continue growing. Where's the bubble, boys?
Yeah.
It can't grow forever, can it?
But no, and yet doesn't feel frothy, does it?
It's interesting watching it because if we're just seeing up and up and up and up, well, how do we recommend that MSPs swim through that and not get eaten up and not just get caught up in the unbelievable VC acquisitions and consolidations that have been going on inside our industry? It's really crazy. Every vendor that I worked with 10 years ago is owned by somebody else today.
And that's what we've been talking about a lot on the show lately. It seems like there's an acquisition story practically every week.
And it's a no-brainer. That's going to continue to be a huge story in 2020. Although, just a quick side note, I mean, we mentioned last week on the podcast that in an interview I did with the CEO of Kaseya, he said that, all other things being equal, barring any surprises, they're looking at doing an IPO, and kind of coming out of private equity, essentially, at least part of the business, in Q4 of this year. And I saw a report online from Joe Panettiere, the great Joe Panettiere. He's hearing rumors. Maybe Datto has an IPO coming this year. So we might start seeing the wheel turn a little bit where we will still see lots of big private equity acquisitions. No question about it. The private equity companies are sitting on a ton of money that they want to put to work right now. But we might also be talking this year about IPOs involving some of these companies. And that's a whole different conversation that, in either case, you're always wondering, well, is this good or bad for the channel pros? How does it affect them? And we might be coming at this from a different direction more often this year, where it's not somebody coming off the market getting bought by a big private equity firm. It's going onto the market, being owned by shareholders, and now they're reporting every quarter. And does that change their mindset in some counterproductive way?
I think Microsoft is still the only company that most end users are going to feel bound to. I think you have near limitless options across the cloud landscape if you wanted to avoid Microsoft in the cloud, but it's hard to do it at the operating system level, because even if you do it at the desktop level, it's near impossible to do at the server level. So depending on the size of your organization, I think there's still going to be some companies that you're going to be beholden to. But the landscape, the way it's exponentially growing, and the amount of cloud players that are coming onto the scene, they have to be competitive, because there's so much competition in this space right now that it's not about price even.
Yeah. Interesting. We were even just like, I think it was this last episode, we were talking about kind of Google's rise and their long-term play. Because you're saying like people are bound to Microsoft, and Google's laid the framework that in 15 years, that may not be the case. It's a long-term play, maybe even 10. But at some point, I'm wondering how much people will be bound to Microsoft, at least for certain things.
I just believe the common sentiment around Google is less secure, almost across the board. From your personal Gmail to remarketing to Facebook, and things you look for get searched and go back and forth. That stuff doesn't happen on O365, and it was by design that it doesn't happen on O365. So I'm betting on Microsoft winning that Google Apps battle in the long term, especially since they're sitting on, I don't know, something like 90 billion in cash that they could just throw around and improve any one area. I don't see them getting smashed. And if you guys are O365 subscribers, you get an email from them every single week with updates to your platform, to your applications, stuff that I did not even ask for. So their development cycle is substantially more accelerated than Google's, and I think that's going to eat Google's lunch in the long term, price notwithstanding.
Yeah.
And that's where people will be bound to Microsoft, is they'll be running their business on Azure, they'll be running their business on Office 360. And so Microsoft won't be, if it even is still an operating system company, but they're still going to have those really entrenched relationships with a whole lot of businesses.
Well, it's the only company that you can be completely homogenous with.
Right. Yeah.
For companies that think that the lower cost of a lower total cost of ownership means less vendors and less products, that is still pretty attractive. So I guess we'll have to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, we will. But it's not, we were talking about, the dip in devices in 2019, but it's not all bad news, Rich. According to the next news story, traditional PC volumes closed out 2019 with a good growth in the fourth quarter. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, that's what we were talking about. That's the data from IDC that showed the first growth, actually, first full year growth in the world of PC since 2011 there. So, and as we were discussing, probably several reasons for that. But yeah, I mean, and PCs is obviously like a subset of devices. So it's not as if there's necessarily a huge disagreement between IDC and Gartner. But because there were a number of different reasons why businesses would be looking to buy PCs, we did actually see growth last year. And then there are no projections in this press release we're talking about here for 2020 from IDC. It'll be interesting to see. There we are. Interesting to see actually how things perform in the PC market this year going forward.
Yeah, sure will. All right. Anything else you want to say about the numbers before we move on?
No, I think we're good.
All right. So we're gonna switch to our next story, which is talking about what we say is the elephant in the room, your 2020 focus on business strategies. So Rich, tell us about this article.
So I will set this up a little bit, and I'm glad to have Ronnie on the show, because mostly what I want to do here is kind of pick his brain on this topic a little bit. But Manuel Palachuk, who is an awesome consultant to managed service providers, he's been a co-host on the show, on the podcast here with us before. He contributed an article to us this week. It went live just a few days ago. And it's about this idea, we're coming into a new year. And a lot of channel pros out there will come into the new year and they'll go through a strategic planning process. They'll come up with strategic initiatives for the year. And then those New Year's strategic initiatives become like New Year's resolutions. Maybe you get started, but then you kind of back out at some point and you never really, after a while you're not doing it anymore and you don't follow through. And Manny would say that a big part of why that is you're probably trying to do too much at once. Probably thinking about too big a goal, trying to accomplish that entire goal all at once. And he invokes this saying you may have heard of, what's the best way to eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So, take these big initiatives, these big goals, break them down into pieces, kind of sequence them in terms of the pieces that need to happen first, and maybe make your strategic planning for 2020 around a few pieces of that larger initiative that you can really stay focused on and execute. Ronnie, I know you have consulted with a lot of MSPs, and I'm sure you have seen this issue where they're trying to come up with strategic plans. Maybe they have trouble kind of figuring out what those plans should be, but then when they do have plans, executing against those plans is probably a challenge. What kinds of advice do you tend to give MSPs about that kind of thing?
Well, I have two ways that I helped my MSP clients back into what they wanted to grow their business, and the ways they wanted to grow their business. What I would say to them is, well, when was the last time you raised prices? And how many clients would you love if they quit tomorrow? If they fired you tomorrow, how many of them would you feel relief? Would you not worry about the revenue? Because by raising prices, you're doing two things. And I always recommend you do this before the end of the year instead of after, because it's hard for a company to set their budget after the year has started in most cases, and they're not interested in why revisit it, blah, blah, blah. So what I like to do is, holiday time, Thanksgiving, Christmas, look at your clients, see who you haven't raised prices in a year or 2 years or 3 years. We'll go back and look at your master services agreement, see if you have something in there that says I'm going to raise your prices a certain percentage every year. If it is, catch them up. They already agreed to it. Just do it. If they didn't do it, all new clients get something in their master services agreement that says I'm going to raise your prices every year. And the ones that didn't get an addendum that said, hey, we can't support you for $125 anymore. Now our rate is $160. Please let us know if this is okay. They're going to come back and say, no, it's not okay, but it is what it is, and that's what it is, and that's what your new bill is going to be, and here's the new agreement, and good luck finding another MSP if you don't want to deal with that. But believe it or not, just by having a pricing conversation with your clients, most times you're bringing them to the table to pay attention to you. You're not trying to sell them something. You're not trying to sell them something new. You're trying to say, what I did for you last year, it's going to be more expensive this year. Let's talk about it. Now, at that sit down, the client is going to feel like they need to get something for that. If they're going to agree to another $35 an hour to pay your company, which on a full-time basis is another $70,000 a year if they have that many hours with you, what are you offering for it? What are you going to do differently? How did you mess up with that client last year? What did you wish you would have helped them put into place last year? So I like, when I'm coming to a table and asking a client for a rate increase, I'd like to say, you're looking at new workstations this year. We're going to give you the services on those. You're looking at a new firewall this year. We're going to give you the firewall. things like that. Because if you can get a client to agree to a project, even if it's on you in the future, you have a lower total cost of ownership for that client. You have new hardware in there. You have new warranty in there. You have a box that is going to handle the speeds and the feeds that you want because you're the person that designed it. You're almost giving a little bit of a hardware as a service product to your client, but the client feels like they're getting something from you. So number one, if you have not made a plan to raise prices in your MSP and you have not raised prices in X amount of years, it's time. Your clients are expecting it. They raise their prices to their clients. Their prices get raised by their vendors. It is a part of doing business. To make this easier, I recommend you build it into your managed services agreement so that it can be forecasted every year and the client can budget for 3 years out and know exactly what it's going to cost. So that's one that is not only worked very well for me, but the MSP clients that I've coached to do that have returned back to me and said that it worked. I was able to get 80% of my clients to upgrade their prices, and we lost 2 that we wanted to lose. So it was a win, and I'm going to do this every other year.
You know, it's interesting hearing you talk about that. And we're what set this off was a conversation about an article from Manuel Palachuk. It reminds me, he did this, he kind of pulled together this mastermind group at the CompTIA ChannelCon show last summer. And there were 2 stories that come to mind when you're talking about that. And there was one MSP there, I remember, because you were talking about how, who are those customers where if you lost the revenue, you actually...
You're happy, yeah. It's addition by subtraction.
So what this guy would do, actually, his exercise every year is he would come up with that list of the customers I hate, and he would say, how much money am I making from these people? How much do I have to raise everybody else's prices to compensate for that? And then at a minimum, he knew that's how he's not coming up with like a 25% number, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it was just that simple, where I want to get rid of these guys. I've got to replace X dollars of income. It means I'm going to raise prices for the other guys this much. Mm-hmm. And then there was another guy, I remember, who said he comes up with that same list, that addition by subtraction list of the people I want to get rid of, and he doesn't fire them necessarily. What he does is say, okay, Mr. Customer, you've been paying us $100 per user a month, and our new price is $200 per user per month. Most of them fire him. Some of them don't, and it's like, well, then fine.
Right. Make it worth it. I used to say, and it was funny, the last time I spoke for you guys, as I was walking off the stage, a guy is standing there with his hand out, says, hi, I want you to come work for me. And the first thing he said to me was, I loved what you said about a jerk tax. I basically said, you have to charge your pain in the butt customers more. Not every customer gets the same price across the board. If I don't want to work with you, you want to work with me more than I want to work with you, you're going to pay more than some other clients that are just much easier to deal with. And no one says you have to charge every customer the same price. Charge your pain in the butt customers more until they stop being a pain in the butt and leave.
And do you actually put that on the invoice?
I wish I could. I wish I could.
That would be like awesome.
Well, then and then it would be up to the client to say, well, how do I get that jerk tax removed? How do I lower that? But it is a real part of business. It's not only opportunistic pricing. If we want to pick up a client, you go a little lower to make sure you get with them. But noisy clients with liaisons that are a little too much to deal with, clients with a lot of remote users, or clients with, they want you to support their notebook and their desktop and their home machine and their kid's machine and their kid's iPad and that we don't charge for. Those are the types of clients that we usually try to weed out. The ones that are just taking a little bit too long for support, that are throwing us off our numbers across the board.
Yeah. So the article here, Rich, talks a lot about, planning initiatives and properly executing them. Ronnie, how do you advise companies to design their strategic initiatives for a year?
Well, are they revenue gaining, or are they expense cutting initiatives?
I think it could be either, right, Rich?
Yeah, well, they're both important. So is it a different approach?
Yeah, I think so, because most of the new revenue or opportunistic tracks are hope. If we do this, we hope this is going to happen. If we do this, we hope we're going to pick up more clients. But I think with cost and expense trimming, you're looking about spending more your money more wisely. So if I gave you the opportunity, Rich, if you could swap 3 people in your company for one, would you?
Without losing, I can. One person can do the work of 3, and it's just as good.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Now, what we have to do is we have to look at the tasks that an MSP does. Most of the times, the bosses are caught up in the finance, the legal, the accounting, the contracts, client negotiations, things like that, and then everything else in terms of support or growth goes to different roles. So what I'm trying to, what I have been coaching some clients to do was either work on your most expensive skill sets and hire someone else to handle the ones that you can't, knowing you're the boss, knowing you want to touch absolutely everything, or just hire an assistant to make you more efficient. Because a lot of times, I would love to pull in a competent MSP CTO to come in and handle all of the back-end tools and negotiation and things like that, but that's what I do. Just because I don't want to do some of the busy work or a little bit of the negotiation doesn't mean that that's a good expense for me to cut. I can't bring somebody in that's going to do that. All they would do is help me with the busy work, the papers, the follow-ups, the calendar schedules, and things like that. That's not going to be a benefit. So for me, in what I'm trying to accomplish, I think it's better to have another engineer, another consultant, someone that we can immediately turn into billable work that can help pay for other things. So it's about the not only the revenue line of the business, whether it's going up, staying the same. We did good in hardware last year. We did good in cloud services last year. We need to spend a little bit less here, or spend a little less on help desk, or spend a little less on back-end systems. But there's always a way to cut at an MSP. Sometimes you're swapping a person for a person at a lower rate. Sometimes you're swapping roles. You're moving one person from here to there. Get off this account. It'll help us. And sometimes it's adding another body to help you accomplish what you need to. Remember, the industry average is 2.5 times the revenue for on a W-2. If I hire somebody for $50,000, I expect them to bill $125,000 for my business. So anyone I hire should be profitable as long as the business is in the right position to begin with. So it's a little different whether you're trying to grow the business and we're going to go after some marketing or something strategic, pick up a new book of business, go after a new client, advertise a little bit, or we're trying to keep more of the revenue and basically increase the profitability of the business by spending less.
Yeah, very, very cool. I'm going to point out one thing in this article, but then I'm going to say go to the show notes page, or if you're watching on YouTube, if you open up the description area, we put all the links there too. There's a lot in here that you will probably want to think about. But one thing that Manuel put in here that I think is important, and it's something that people forget about, is that the ultimate secret is that if you fail to complete an initiative, you need to learn from it. You need to learn why you failed or why it didn't work, so that way you can do it better next time. And I think a lot of people forget to learn from their mistakes.
Well, even worse than that, in an MSP, what good is it if you learn from your mistake, but you don't teach the rest of the company to learn from that mistake so that they don't trip over it as well? If you're a business owner, you don't want your 20 employees all making the same mistake one at a time. That's the worst situation for utilization. So what we try to do is every time you learn something, every time a process is improved, every time we add something to our internal wiki, it gets blasted out to the team so that everybody knows about it, so that you don't have to run into this bug on this Meraki switch that I ran into, because now it's documented. It's in IT Glue. It's documented for everybody, and we all should be learning from it.
Agreed. So good. So go and check that article out. We are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to see an interview with Chris Weiser of the Weiser Agency. We're going to talk a little about social media.
Cool.
We recorded this at the top of the hour, so we're going to cut to it now. It's a great interview. You'll definitely want to stick around and watch that. We will be right back. All right, and we are back. And hey, we got an interview segment here. Chris Weiser from the Weiser Agency is here to talk about social media marketing for channel pros. Welcome, Chris.
Hey guys, how you doing today? So happy to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you as well. So it sounds like you're at a conference. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We're talking social media marketing. We're talking all this different stuff right now. I'm actually at a big landing page software's annual user conference, ClickFunnels. I'm at their Funnel Hacking Live event in Nashville right now, and I actually won one of their awards, their 2 Comma Club awards, so I'm receiving that tomorrow. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. And it's actually, what's interesting, we're talking MSPs, we're talking all this sales page / funnel that I won the award for is what I have used to sell to my services to the MSPs that I work with.
Well, congratulations on winning that award. So Chris, for those who aren't familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit more about you, who you are, what you do?
Sure. So just to give you guys a background on this, I owned an MSP for 10 years plus in the Milwaukee market, sold that MSP, moved down to Texas to get out of winter, basically, and started a consulting firm to help MSPs sell better. And that's really the crux and the goal of what we have. Many MSPs come in thinking that lead generation is going to solve all their problems, when in reality, everybody that comes into our program, I could hand them probably the best lead and they'd find some way to turn it into a price-based sale. So we help them build value, show this, and our average client comes in with about $100 per seat on an all-you-can-eat type of plan is what they're selling for. They exit our program or mature through our program seeing $300 to $400 per seat. So we're helping them get that revenue up and to really grow their recurring revenue. Cash flow solves all problems is my mindset behind it. So that's what we do.
Lead is great, but a closed client is much better.
A closed lead that really is worth it too, right? That, like, not a pain in the rear, per se. Yep.
Well, Chris, one of the things that you've actually written about for us at ChannelPro before, and this is part of what you do, not all of what you do, but you've written for us before about social media marketing. And that's what I'm really kind of looking forward to diving into with you, because marketing in general, as we all know, is a challenge for the typical MSP. The technical skills are very strong, the sales and marketing stuff they're learning on the job. Social media marketing in particular, I think, is challenging for folks because they know that it could be helpful, that they should be doing it. They don't necessarily know how to go about doing it. So let's just go ahead and start by defining our terms a little bit here. From your perspective, what is social media marketing for an MSP or a VAR?
Sure, and that's a fantastic question, because a lot of times MSPs don't think that social media is a place where they can find prospects or find clients. So making sure that you're on all the platforms, specifically the ones that people are engaging with and your prospects on / clients are going to be sitting on. So Facebook is absolutely key. Now, are you going to pick up a managed services client sale there? No, but could you pick up a lead and inform them and establish your expertise? Absolutely. I run a large B2B practice on Facebook almost exclusively. LinkedIn is also huge. And then other places that you can actually engage with them. There's a brand new product called Shaper. It's SHAPR. It's an app that helps you to do that kind of things as well. And it's kind of almost like the Tinder for LinkedIn. It's not necessarily a dating app, but it's a business dating app per se. So it's looking at those things and then making sure that you have a presence. Your goal is not necessarily trying to close clients on those. In fact, that's probably the last thing you want to do ever, is try and close a client online. But your goal is simply to get somebody to establish you as an expert, see that you have those skill sets, and then to also potentially book a meeting. Like, that should be your max goal on anything social media. And to give you guys an idea, that's my max goal. Like, I'm never trying to close a client online. We just want to try and get you on the phone in some capacity, or on a Zoom meeting is what we do a lot. But so I think that's probably your best definition.
And so what, on a day-to-day basis, what does your participation, or should your participation in social media look like to generate that awareness and visibility and get people interested in speaking with you?
Yeah, so I think some of the most important things with that, establishing connections with prospects and clients on multiple platforms, and then putting pieces of content out that get them asking questions, get them saying, should I care about cybersecurity? And cybersecurity is hot right now, so I think that's probably the biggest thing that we should be leading in with on all platforms. But getting them asking questions, putting video out there, getting them asking themselves questions about what are you doing in your business to secure yourself? Do you realize that you really have liability? Do you understand that hackers are going after small companies? All these different pieces, and educating them, which establishes your expertise up that ladder. And then I think we all know now, it's like, and I tell my clients this all the time, this is the best time ever to be an MSP, because we finally have something that's pushing the clients to actually spend money and budget. So making sure that you are the ones they think of when they have a problem. We all know they're going to get hit at some point, sooner than later here. So putting that stuff out there, whether it's video content, posts, every single day, you should be putting those content pieces out there with interrogative questions and things getting them thinking and asking so they think of you when the time comes. And maybe they have a need now, but maybe it's down the road, and you want to be the one they think of when they get to that point.
Hey, Chris, can I hop in with a question?
Sure, fire away.
I always coach my MSP consulting clients that if you were going to go social and you were going to go out into, the self-marketing post a day type of thing, that you really wanted to have 3 to 5 posts a week. What do you think about frequency? Like, what's the minimum before that you would recommend an MSP focused on social media posts?
I definitely agree. 3 to 5 posts a week. I'm kind of in the mindset of, if you have somebody that's listening and if you're giving good content and they're actually listening, you really can't post too much. I mean, there's a fine line there, obviously, but if the big factor is if you have people that are paying attention to you and you're getting them engaged in your content, they're gonna listen to you all the time, especially if you're not selling them. Education is key. Giving away as much as you can. I post and I have a social media strategist that runs my team, and she posts as me on my team across all my platforms. We post, and we have multiple Facebook groups. We have multiple Facebook pages, and I have my personal pages on that side. We also have LinkedIn, etc. We're posting at least once every single day, but we're posting in every single content area. So once on my personal profile, once on each page, and then once or twice in each one of the Facebook groups, depending on where it goes.
And what do you think about automation tools like Hootsuite and things like that?
The challenge with automation tools is you can't schedule personal profile posts on an automation tool, first of all. And I'm fine with them as long as it's like group related for a business page. But the problem is on the personal side, you can't schedule that stuff at all. And what Facebook has done in the last 2 years is they basically, and LinkedIn is now doing this as well. If you don't post as yourself, they drop the engagement unless you're putting ad spend behind it. So they're basically saying, we're not going to give you free stuff anymore, business owners. We're going to make you pay to get engagement on your posts with ads. Facebook and LinkedIn are both doing that. And then what happens in that scenario is people then they try and use the automation tools in a set it and forget it type mindset, and then they get no engagement on their posts, and then everything dies. And Facebook's and LinkedIn is totally mimicking Facebook and all their stuff that they're doing now in terms of algorithms and engagement variables and all this other stuff. But the bottom line is, if you're not posting regularly and you have no engagement in your post, the post drops down and then nobody sees it. It kind of drops down the feed. So the frequency is key, but also getting engagement is key. The engagement on a post is what keeps it at the top of the feed, so more people see it.
Now, on that, Chris, what about wherewithal? And what I mean by that is there any danger in saying, like, I'm excited about social media today, and I'm going to go out and I'm going to build an audience, and then, like, you just give up? Does that have the potential to backfire on you if you do that?
Well, it's a fantastic question, and the answer is a unbelievably wholeheartedly yes on that. Because what happens is the algorithm forgets about you on all the platforms now. And I'll give you a great case in point to this. I literally was just thinking about this week. I have a friend of mine that had a multi-million-dollar coaching business, not in this world, just somebody that's a peer that I know from, and she had massive engagement, massive following, and she quit to go after Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining and all the cyber currencies for like a year. She just came back after kind of struggling and not doing that great in that world, is trying to do all the posts, and nothing is getting engagement. Her groups are dead. Her posts are completely dead. And I talk to her all the time, so it stays, I see it, and I actually have it pushed in my feed, but it's a great example of what happens with the algorithm over time just because of that. It's one of those, it's a fantastic question.
So you were talking before about content. So, I mean, in terms of what you're actually posting 3 to 5 times a week or whatever it is, that, it's content that's going to help people understand cybersecurity or the importance of backup or the, opportunities in the cloud, whatever. Where should people be thinking about getting this where is this content coming from that they're sharing with folks?
Yeah, this is probably the biggest challenge that the whole MSP industry faces right now is content development. And most IT owners, MSP owners, VARs, they are technical in nature. So that's a natural struggle for them. And it's not a bad thing. It's a reality. So what I also see is simplicity versus complexity. IT people are very complex in nature. They want to try and tell the whole story and give all the stuff. So they give away so much stuff in a single post that it's almost overwhelming. My suggestion is to break those posts down into small segments and to come up with single ideas that are simple. The confused mind says no, usually. So if you get people that are confused and get lost in the weeds on what your posts are and what you're saying, it's gonna, they're gonna lead. You ever see that thing on on the internet where it says like too long didn't read, the TLDR? That's kind of like, you want instead of the TLDR, which is the massive post, you want the small snippet, and that's what you want them to say. So that's thing number one. A lot of you have that content in your head, but it's getting it out in a simple way that your end users can understand. So that's thing one. Thing two is there's a massive amount of vendors that have a lot of content that they're giving away free. I'm not going to mention any names unless you guys want me to, but bottom line is a lot of vendors have marketing programs. They partner with other firms, and they generate massive amounts of content that they give away. Use it. Take it on. And then make sure that you are nurturing people. And this is also the big factor with social media. Just because they're listening on social once doesn't mean that they're always going to pay attention. You want to grab their attention, try and capture something with some type of a capture mechanism so you can nurture them more cleanly. And when I talk about that, it's taking them from social media and turning them into an actual opt-in into your email nurture software. Then there's also the email, okay, and where that goes is the email content side, because that's the other struggle I see is, okay, I've got all these leads. I got 7,000 leads from my chamber over the last 5 years or whatever, right? And how do we talk to them regularly besides a monthly newsletter? Because that's pretty much what everybody does. It's just like the once-a-month newsletter. But you have to talk to people so much more now because their mindset and their attention depth frequency is way different than it was 5 years ago. And now, 5 years ago, where the average touches to get a sale was like 7 to 8, now it's 30 to 50 to get somebody to engage with your stuff. You have to touch somebody 30 to 50 times.
Wow.
To get them to engage with your sale. So if you're only doing a monthly newsletter via email, you got to email them for 30 months to get them to care. They're gone. Like they're way long gone and they've forgotten about you. And to give you an idea, we email our prospects. Once they come into our nurture, we email them every 2 days with valued content. I have a massive amount of nurture content. It's my team's responsibility that we write 3 to 4 emails every single week at the bottom of our automation sequence to keep it fresh. So it's hard. I'm not going to say it's not easy, but it's also a massive differentiation point for you that's listening, right? So it's thinking about all those, and the content equation is a challenge. Like everybody's struggling with that, to be fair, but simplicity is key.
But in terms of a time investment, I mean, if there's anything sort of encouraging about this is that your company can have that consistent presence and can be touching an audience on a regular basis. It doesn't necessarily have to be you as the business owner who's driving that. You can share that burden a little bit inside the company if you have employees.
100%. And to give you an idea on my side, the emails go out as Chris Weiser, but I write almost, we review topics as a team, but I write almost zero content at this point. I have a team that's doing all that. It started out as me 2 years ago, writing 5 emails a month or something like that. And I had a large, wider window between frequency. But then as I got more content, I shortened the window to, it was 5 days, then 4 days, then 3 days. Now we're at 2 days. And as you get more content, it's key. But my team does almost all of that development. And this is kind of a personal challenge that a lot of MSP owners also run into, that I just noticed this. And it's more the personality type that we all are. But it's letting go of the control, mastering the strategy, and then delegating that execution out to your team. That's one of the biggest factors in this. You can't do everything, so you have to be okay with letting a little of that control go and expanding. That's the biggest key.
And you don't even have to be an MSP for that to be a problem. That's my problem in the publishing world.
Agreed.
Totally get it. You know what? You've got me a little bit scared now. 30 to 50 touches. That is a big number. So we're talking social media and email. Now I'm thinking, what else should people in the audience be doing to get that kind of volume of mind share with potential customers?
Well, and note that I know we're talking social media today, but also realize that the mechanism that you touch them with determines how long or how short the engagement and sale process is. And I'll give you a great example of this. So this is a literal thing that happened in my business over the last couple months. we have people. I just had a call with a guy a couple weeks ago. His name was Darren. He came into our situation, booked basically a strategy call. He had been in our sales funnel with getting automation emails for over 10.5 months. He had over 90 touches over 10.5 months between webinars and seminars and all this different stuff that we're doing, and emails and retargets and ad touches and all these different things. So we saw that there was over 90 touches over 10 months. He finally booked a call. That's how long it took. And marketing as a whole that's kind of how it is now. It's a slow roll. I have another situation where I was at IT Nation this past year, end of October. I spoke on stage. Had a guy that was in the audience, had never seen me before, nothing. Engaged with me, talked with me after the session, became a client in a week. So a lot of this is, if you want to get clients faster, you have to try and engage with your clients deeper, doing live events, speaking events, trade shows, and then combining that with how are we going to, all those business cards we get at that event, or all the leads we get from our chamber, all those touches we do when we do these shows or anything like that, then nurturing them down the line and making sure that you're touching them regularly with education. So it kind of goes back to what I was talking about in the open, that you have to become a trusted expert in their mind, because they may not need you now, but you want them to think of you when it comes to that point. So that's very key piece. But kind of to final summarize that, not only Facebook ads or Facebook posts, but Facebook video is very key. That's a massive differentiation point right there. For those of you that are watching on video right now, it's a podcast and a video cast. You can see how important video is, because you can explain things with your hands and all these, and you can actually establish a connection with your audience. But then also doing retargeting ads on Facebook and LinkedIn and all these different platforms, and we have Google AdWords ads and all this different stuff. So you're touching them and you're controlling that. It's a pretty deep rabbit hole, no matter how you go. But it's just the more touches you have, the more it's going to learn to expertise and conversions.
Well, it's funny you actually use the word rabbit hole, because sometimes when I talk to people about social media, they use that exact same expression, because it's like it never ends, it never stops, and it becomes this massive time sink, especially as your engagement starts getting going, because it's like, when do you stop engaging? If you have everybody commenting and posting on your posts, and asking questions, where do you draw the line? So what would you say to a smaller business owner that maybe doesn't have a big team behind them to do this kind of stuff? How would you get started, and what would you set your goal to be?
Yeah. So I think a couple things are really key, and I'll give everybody that's on this call a really good tip. Now, number one, it does take a little bit of work. I'm not going to sit here and say anything in life that's worth any type of value takes work. But let's just think about what we did 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago, in terms of we were trying to do this same thing with direct mail. So you had all this logistical headache and all this logistical cost, and we had zero tracking and zero engagement track, because we had no idea. The only way we knew if somebody would engage with a direct mail piece is if they called or it got returned to us. That's the only tracking you had. Now we have all this ability to do all this engagement and all these other things, plus the logistical side of it is fast and easy, and you can do it from anywhere. So that side of it is really key, but then taking that and turning it into something that they might want. The biggest key to all of this, and here's where I'll probably start, but solving a problem that they might have and selling to that solution is really, really key. All of us as MSPs have, and I'm not necessarily not an MSP anymore, but I work with them every single day. So all of us are in this world where we can solve a lot of problems, but we spew it out as this complex mess. All we want to do is protect them from hackers and protect their business from getting hacked. That's really ultimately where we want to talk now. And this is where I was going with that tip that I said would be super valuable. Facebook groups are monstrous. I have a Facebook group with IT business owners in it. It's 7,200 plus members and growing by 100 a week. Like, it's awesome. And start your own Facebook group, but then make it for your regional or your local audience, and make it a place that people that would be your target audience come in and you solve their problem. So bosses of $1 million businesses, or Charlotte business owners group, or Charlotte multi-million-dollar business owners group. That kind of stuff, to where you bring them in, solve some problems, and then the best thing you can do, and great case in point, Rich, you and I know each other for a while. You literally sent me an email and said, hey, you want to be on my podcast? And I said, sure. that's what you do to your other prospects. You go out to them and you start potentially a podcast or a live video series in your group, and then you invite your prospects and you say, hey, do you want to come get interviewed on my podcast, videocast in my group? What a big, great way to entertain, build a relationship and to break down barriers and establish yourself as an expert. Because two of us in this room have never met. Rich and I know each other, but we've never met. I see you guys as experts because you're running a podcast. Like that's what you do. It's the same scenario, but take it and extend it to your local market. Start your own Facebook group. Bring all of your clients in there, all your prospects in there, and build yourself some expertise and talk to them every day. That's what you do.
It's pretty brilliant. It's good advice. I think we're pretty much out of time, but Chris, thank you so much for being here with us and for being on the show. I'd love to have you back. Social media is a huge topic and one that everybody struggles with and wants to know more about. And I bet you're just a fountain of information. Beyond even
usually can't get me to shut up, so that's good.
So it's awesome. So for people who want to maybe learn more about you and connect with you, where can they find you?
They can just head over to 7figuremsp.com. We help you add 7 figures to your MSP this year. So just go there. You can book time, and we can work with you. Awesome.
We'll also put a link to that on our show notes page. Thank you so much. We're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with some end of the show notes and features, and we've got a museum pick and a tech pick for you, a pretty fun one. So you'll want to stick around for that. We will be right back. All right, and we are back with part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly. We're going to wrap up with our museum pick, tech pick. We're also going to play 5 questions with Ronnie. It'll be a little bit of fun here at the end of the show. But I got to say, that was a really great interview with Chris Weiser, and social media is definitely a topic that everybody wants to know about. Ronnie, what did you think of the interview?
I like Chris. I like his approach. He didn't suggest anything that sounded like a guess. Everything sounded like, tried and true. The numbers that he was throwing out, the return rates, things like that. I liked it. It's one of the more difficult things that I have had to do in the past is leverage social media marketing for MSPs. We've done all sorts of syndicated content services and sales companies that would give us the content every day to put on our site. So obviously, relying on your people to write articles when they should be servicing clients is a little difficult. We are not a publishing company. We are an MSP. We are not writers. Just because we can write technical documentation does not mean we are writing blog posts every day. So it's very difficult, and I would love to learn a little bit more from Chris about how I can work with my MSP clients moving forward.
Yeah, Rich, what do you think?
Well, the thing that I love anytime I get a chance to talk about that stuff with Chris is just how immersed he's become in that world. And to your point, Ronnie, I mean, he's very specific about how to go about it, and very practical, which is I think what people need and what they struggle with is they know it's a smart idea, and it's like I don't really know what I should be. And Chris has a formula for how you can kind of go about and do that, and it's definitely there's effort involved, ongoing effort. To your point, Matt, that you can't, don't start and then disappear and so on. You've got to be committed to it. But as he goes through it, it really doesn't sound unmanageable for the average, channel pro out there. Until
Facebook changes their algorithm, or LinkedIn does something different and doesn't show you as high in the post, or doesn't reflect your comments. It's always something. And you have so many companies that you're dealing with. If you only had one channel, like let's just say your own blog, to worry about, it would be a heck of a lot easier than worrying about all the social channels and how they handle their media. It is true. I mean, even for us, in the publisher, it is difficult to keep on top of that stuff too, because you might, as an MSP, suddenly find yourself not doing as well on LinkedIn or whatever as you used to be, and wondering what the heck happened. And just keeping on top of changes in policies, changes in the algorithms, and so on is an activity in itself. Yep,
absolutely. All right, well, good. It was great, great interview. So, Ronnie, we're going to play a little game with you. We call it 5 questions. So Ronnie's got his hand up and he's doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's right. 5 questions. We will basically come up with 5 questions off the top of our head. Could be about anything. And it's usually a lot of fun, and it's to kind of learn. I'm a little light on my European history, so you might want to avoid that topic. Not trivia per se. This is usually just stuff about the stuff that you think.
Cool.
All right. Rich, I will kick us off with 5 questions. Question 1. If you were going to eat an elephant, what kind of sauce would you use?
Barbecue.
Excellent. Rich?
So we talked about you being a beer judge, but you're also quite the cigar connoisseur. So I am now giving you the magical power, the unlimited power to conjure up any cigar on planet Earth. What is the cigar that you on your wish list, the top of your wish list?
I have one left. I went through 2 boxes of them when they first came out. It was a 2007 Camacho Liberty. It was made with 1964 pre-embargo Cuban tobacco.
Wow.
I have one left. I can describe the flavor palette in my mouth, and I cannot wait to taste it. I'm going to save it for my 50th birthday. I cannot find another one. They were probably the last one on Earth. So I'm going to save it for a special occasion, and that is my favorite cigar of all time. I'm very happy to say I have one left.
Good for you. Good for you. And how soon until your 50th birthday? That's not a question that counts, by the way.
8 years.
8 years. Okay. It'll stay good for 8 years.
Oh, yeah. If you when a product is cured the right way, it can last fresh forever.
Wow.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you will have to come back and tell us about that blissful experience when you have that. All right. Question number 3. Chris Weiser talked about mechanisms in which to touch people. What is your favorite mechanism to touch people with?
I really like a phone call. In my personal life, in my business life, I like just getting on the phone with somebody and saying, hey, how are you? Because it doesn't matter what the answer is. They could vent. They could give you something good. They could give you something. It doesn't matter, but you asked. You were there. It's certainly more personal than an email. It's often very hard to touch someone passively via email and have them feel the way you wanted them to feel. So I like a phone call. I like knowing who I'm calling and what they like. I like to get them on the phone and ask them if they saw the game over the weekend, or how the kids' dance recital went, or how your big 400-pound dog is doing. I'm a friendly person, and I think when you get my personality out, it helps. I also like to get people talking. Ask a lot of questions, throw out some evocative statements, and just wait basically with clients.
So if you're going to touch somebody, you're going to touch them with a phone. You got to remember, though, not everybody likes to be touched. Yes. All right. Question number 4. What is your favorite restaurant in New York this year, or that you've visited in the last year? So that way we don't make it too difficult.
All right. Let's just go Italian. There's a spot on 61st and 1st in the city. It's called Il Vagabondo. Very old school Italian place. I don't think they take credit cards. Sawdust on the floor type of place. They have a bocce ball court in the basement. The food is just spectacular. I went in there one time just for their hamburger. Just the way that they season a hamburger was really just above average. And I try to get there when I can, but it's been a while.
Awesome. There's a new restaurant for those who are in the New York area to try. Rich, last question goes to you.
Well, I was going to, it's probably too close to what you just asked, because we had Christoph Schell, the Chief Commercial Officer from HP on the show before, and I asked him, like, what's the place in your native Germany to visit that people don't know they should visit? And so New York, everyone's been to New York, but they've done the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty. So, I mean, I'll go ahead and ask it. I've already practically asked it. What is the place in New York that you really should do when you're there that you probably aren't aware you should do?
Well, I've never been to the Statue of Liberty, Empire State Building, World Trade Center, Ellis Island, or any of that stuff. I never did those tours as a kid, and they didn't really interest me as an adult. But I like the outdoor areas. So let's go back to the cigars for a second. There's a public park. It's a private park. It's owned by. Give me one second. Bill Paley, the son of the founder of CBS, William Paley. Bill Paley is a big cigar aficionado, and his family owns a private park on 53rd Street and 5th Avenue, where smoking is encouraged. Stay all day. They have a little food and drink and stuff like that, but it's a really a nice little haven, a little oasis in the middle of the crazy Manhattan, and you're not going to get chased out of there by anyone.
Yeah, I mean, that is squarely in Midtown. That is.
Oh, yeah.
Midtown,
Wow.
interesting. All right, cool. Well, thank you, Ronnie. I have more questions for you, but I'll save them for the next show when we can play 5 questions again.
Yeah, hopefully I see you in Dallas or Boston or something like that. We'll have some fun.
Absolutely. All right, so we're gonna go into my museum pick, and my museum pick, Rich, is this one might be a Groundhog Day one. I feel like I've done this before, so if this seems eerily familiar, folks, it's only because in our show notes I just sent Rich a link to a photograph of it, and I didn't actually write what it was, so that makes it really hard to go back and look and see what I've done. But the museum pick that I've picked this week, and I'm gonna disappear from the video for just a second.
Where'd he go?
Ah, he's gone. All right, it is this guy right here. Ronnie, you know what that is?
That's an HP something.
It's an HP something. This is the HP MediaSmart server. The HP MediaSmart server. So once upon a time, back in the late XP era, into the Windows 7, early Windows 7 era, HP tried to sell a server to consumers.
Windows Media Server.
Windows Media Server was a little different animal. So the MediaSmart server actually ran a stripped-down version of Windows Server 2003.
Cool.
And what HP was trying to do was trying to put a centralized box in the house that could back up computers and store media and then distribute media to PCs and stuff around the home. It was actually a really cool product. The first model, which is what this one is, I actually own all 3 versions of this. This is the EX475. The first model was a little underpowered, so it was a little slow. It was a little awkward to use as well, but HP did a pretty good job of making the remote desktop part of it work. But it was such a cool, flexible product. So once you put this on there and installed their little MediaSmart app on a desktop, it would automatically start backing up all of the PCs in snapshots. And the kind of snapshots where the first snapshot is like the full backup, and then it takes snapshots there, but just on the things that have changed, so it can pull different images. Yeah, what is it called?
It's called an incremental backup.
Incremental backup. Yes, thank you. And the word was in my head, but I'm glad that you were able to fish it out. Yeah, so it would do the incremental backups, and you could, and then if you needed to, if your hard drive died in your computer or whatever, you needed to revert back, it came with a disk. You'd plop it in your PC, boot to it, and you could actually restore, bare metal restore right from the MediaSmart server and refresh the PC with a whole new image. It was cool, but I want to say somewhat poorly marketed, but it did get quite a following. The device and the hardware itself, so it's like a mini tower PC. It held 4 hard drives, and the bottom, it wasn't quite as flexible as some systems where you can lose any drive. There was like a system drive, which was the bottom one, and if that one went out, you'd have to kind of restore the MediaSmart server, but then you still wouldn't lose any data, but you kind of had to reload the whole thing. But if any of the other 3 drives died, you could just put a new one in, and it would rebuild itself. So
RAID 5 most likely. Yep.
Yeah. So whatever Microsoft tended to use, but it was flexible and it was cool. I used it for a very, very long time. They had 3 models: the EX485 and the EX495. The 475, I believe, was AMD based, and it was limited to 2 gigs of RAM. And if you've ever tried to run Windows Server on 2 gigs of RAM, it is not a pleasant experience. So they increased that in the later versions, and they went to an Intel chip, which improved the performance quite a bit. So that is when HP tried to sell a server to consumers. Now, obviously, so what happened? Well, eventually, after 3 models, the MediaSmart server kind of died mostly because the consumer market changed significantly, and it went far more to device-based computing and streaming and stuff like that. So people were housing a lot less media in their home, and they weren't necessarily using as many backup or laptops and keeping that kind of photos and videos and stuff on local machines. They were more storing it in cloud services like Google Photos or OneDrive or wherever. So that's where it happened. So, Rich, can you believe that they were trying to sell a server to people?
Well, and it's interesting because we mentioned the whole media server thing. I assumed that's what you were talking about, but yeah, this is actually a Windows Server product for consumers. I don't think I've ever heard of that before.
Yeah, and they were focusing on trying to sell the media aspect of like centralizing photos, and they had some software and some like dedicated apps in there where you could actually set up a photo share, expose this to the internet, and like people could log in and look at photos. So again, this was still kind of pre a lot of the photo sharing services that were out there, because they had that vision. But if you know the HP of yore, especially the HP of the late 2000s, mid 2000s, they were just not really good at updating stuff. Like they were really gung ho about releasing a product. It was really cool, and then they just couldn't support it. And they never built on it. They never iterated on it, and bugs were never fixed. Problems were never solved. And it's too bad, because it was a really neat thing. And I kind of wish there was another product like this for the consumer market, because there really isn't anything to replace this.
Well, with the exception of the backup portion of it, Plex on any desktop will handle all the media streaming and cataloging and things like that. But the remote continuous backup is a tough one to combine with a media server. That was an interesting product. Yeah,
very, very neat. So I would encourage people to go and read about that and check that out. And it did have quite a following for a while. It was pretty cool. So Ronnie, I like to usually do a tech pick every week too. I like to usually say, well, that was then, this is now. And this was a server kind of aimed at consumers. And I suppose if you were a small business, you could have used it. It was limited to 10 PCs, I believe, that you could back up, or 10 users, But if you were going to if you have a really small business, if you have a customer with a really small business, and you want a server, you might want something like the Dell EMC PowerEdge T140. So, Ronnie, that is a small, again, mini tower server. I don't want to necessarily go into specs, because Dell EMC servers, you can spec them a million ways from Sunday. But it's a single Xeon, single core server, lots of RAM, very small, very flexible, runs Windows Server. I don't remember which version. I think there's a couple different versions you can put on here, actually. Ubuntu, Windows Server LTCS with Hyper-V, SUSE, so lots of different OSs. But if you were looking in the market for a small server to handle some of those kinds of functions, that would be a good one to get. What do you think, Rich? How many servers do you have in your house?
None. Actually, I have an old laptop that I at least semi-officially use as a media server, except I don't really use it anymore because I'm streaming everything.
Yeah, so many people stream these days. It's I still run a server. I don't run the MediaSmart one anymore, but I actually run a Synology kind of NAS server in the house, because I still have a lot of I made things simpler for the kids. So we have a lot of DVDs and stuff and movies that you can't get on streaming services. Mm-hmm. So I rip them, put them on the server, and then on their tablets or wherever they can easily play them back on stuff, or on the TV, and hold some pictures and back up some important stuff. But so I still kind of run the device like that. But I know a lot of people don't. But a lot of businesses still need a small server. So that is one to get. So that's my museum pick, the HP MediaSmart server, and my tech pick, the Dell EMC PowerEdge T140. So, Rich, why don't you tell us what happened in your In Case You Missed It post that was done by Mr. Gaskin, and tell us what you think is coming down the pike.
Well, yes, indeed. So I told you, kind of a light news week here, but every Friday on ChannelProNetwork.com, you're going to get a roundup of stories you may have missed in the IT industry in our In Case You Missed It post. And this week, he will be talking a little bit about a new mobile app from Kaseya that combines their RMM and PSA product in one interface. There's an initiative that Rackspace announced this week alongside Alert Logic to enhance cybersecurity for SMB users of Amazon Web Services. And then every year at this time, if you're in the media, you know every year at this time you get contacted in one way or another by the good folks at Oscar Mayer who like to announce to everybody that they're hiring drivers for the Wienermobile. And we're just saps for this in the media because we love having an excuse to say Wienermobile. This year they got the Wienermobile in the news maybe for a reason they didn't like so much. It involved a police officer pulling one over to the side of the road. And our very own James Gaskin will take you through the details on that. Now, looking ahead to next week, what do we have coming up in the industry here? Well, the very first quarterly meeting of the ConnectWise IT Nation Evolve Group. So you may still know that as HTG peer groups. They have been rebranded for a while now, IT Nation Evolve. They're going to be meeting in Phoenix this coming week. And then there's an event by a company called Pessler, Paessler. They have what they're calling a monitoring camp for their users in Philadelphia coming up this week. If you haven't heard of Pessler, this is like a PSA product that is much bigger in Europe than it is here. It's interesting to me that they have gotten to a point now where they can actually hold a North American user event. So just learned about that this week. I'll kind of keep an eye on that, and that's what's coming up in next week.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Ronnie, I want to say a big thank you to you for being here and guest hosting with us today. It's always a pleasure having you on, and hopefully we'll have you back to guest host with again in the future.
Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it. I always love talking about the current trends. Miss my ChannelPro people. And
well, you're gonna come out to an event this year.
I would love it. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So, Ronnie, for people who wanted to connect with you on the social networks or website, where can people find you?
Ronnie Parisella, Parisella, just about everywhere. I'm pretty easy to Google. And please take a look at mactez.com. Again, it's not a flashy website, but you will get the point that we get down to brass tacks and focus on the business along with the technology.
Fantastic. And I'd also like to give a big thank you to today's sponsor, Connect Armor, sponsored today's episode with their Connect and Fix product. They are at corporatearmor.com. Please check them out. And a big, again, thank you to them for sponsoring ChannelPro Weekly. If you'd like to connect with us on the socials, we are at ChannelPro SMB on Twitter. We are ChannelPro Network on Facebook and LinkedIn. If you want to email us, we'd love to get more emails, folks, because we'd love to read them on the phone. And Rich, I think we had a couple we were maybe going to read, or did you? Or well, we'll compile them and we'll do them another day because we're running long. Podcast at channelpronetwork.com is the email address. Please send us your comments, and you can comment to us on the Facebooks and Twitters, so we can read your thoughts here. If you disagree with something that we said, maybe if you do disagree with something that Ronnie said.
Yeah. Please do, actually.
But yeah, hey,
more fun. Debate is fun.
Correct the record, and we'll say it here. Or if you want to say something about the show, we would love to hear it. Something you want us to cover, let us know, and we'll do that. The website, channelpronetwork.com, is the website. Make that your homepage. Bookmark it. Go there every day. We've got news, except for this week, apparently. No, there was some other stuff this week, but just maybe not a lot of stuff to really dive in here on the show. But we got news, we got articles, we got resources, white papers, all kinds of good stuff coming up on that homepage each and every day. Vendor of the Vanguard is coming up. Rich, I know we were going to talk about that, and we're running long, but go to channelpronetwork.com, look for the form for Vendor of the Vanguard, and you can nominate an upcoming vendor Rich, 5-second overview of Vendor of the Vanguard.
Once a year in ChannelPro, we publish a list of what we call vendors on the Vanguard. These are the sort of up-and-coming, underappreciated, lesser-known vendors out there, the cool sort of smaller names that people really maybe don't know about but should. We have a lot of suggestions every year on the editorial team at ChannelPro, but there is a nominating form on channelpronetwork.com. If you know of a company we should include in this year's list, please tell us about it.
Do that. And assuming that nothing is broken, you should definitely subscribe to ChannelPro Weekly. You can do so in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and now Stitcher, and now Spotify. So go to any of those or anywhere where you get your podcasts. We're probably in most of them at this point. And subscribe. That way shows come to you. You don't have to think about it. We put a new episode out, which is Rich, we've been really good about doing weekly. We used to say ChannelPro Weekly was just that shows would come out in a week of the year, like one week. It will be a week when it came out. Well, now we're actually pretty much weekly, which is great. And if you like to watch, we're on YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that little red button, and then the bell, and then all, because I keep adding layers to the notifications on YouTube. So subscribe, bell, all, and then if that changes down the road where it's another thing, we'll tell you about that down the road. So thank you all, including Mr. Ronnie Parisella for joining us. We will see you all next week.